Rain drowns the city under a bruised sky, the kind that keeps every umbrella out and every shop closed. A stray cat watches the storm unbothered, while one lone shopkeeper flips his sign to open anyway. He tells himself it's kindness, sheltering strangers from the flood. Really, he's just hoping somebody buys a book tonight. Above the flooded streets, the storm hides a different kind of violence. Two figures collide across a rooftop under a bruised moon, blades flashing faster than the rain falls. A woman with burning eyes fights like something inhuman, and when it ends, only she is still standing, ribs cracked, blood soaking her sleeve. The power she borrowed to win will cost her an hour of healing, and an hour exposed in the open might be all it takes to lose everything. Every storefront on the street is dark except one, a bookstore lit and open in weather that's chased everyone else indoors, too convenient to be chance, too quiet to be a trap. Either way, she's out of better options. She pushes the door open. Inside smells of old paper and something calmer than fear. A man behind the desk greets her like he's been expecting her all along. She reads him fast, the calm, the readiness, shelves stocked with exactly what a wounded stranger might need. No ordinary shopkeeper keeps his lights on at midnight for nobody. Whoever he really answers to, he isn't what he looks like. He offers a hot towel like an overeager clerk starved for company, deflecting when she asks if he knew she was coming. But the moment she lets slip that she's in trouble, he reads her instantly, not with pity, but with the ease of someone who's talked 100 broken people into exactly what they needed. He doesn't push, he suggests, letting her fill in her own wound with her own words. Then he answers it with something sharper. People who've already lost their humanity don't owe anyone mercy. She still can't tell if he's an ally or a threat. When he slides a worn paperback across the counter and calls it a cure for heartbreak, she almost laughed. The moment her fingers touch the cover, memory floods back red. Claws, torn skin, the power that let her survive that rooftop already eating her from the inside. Hunters buy their strength the same way. Tainted blood injected straight into the body, borrowed force with a body count attached. The stronger the dose, the harder the fall. But this shopkeeper already seems to understand that poison better than she does, maybe well enough to turn it against the hunters who made it. He doesn't ask her to feel sorry for what happened. He asks her to look at it honestly and see who the betrayal made her. It's blunt, almost businesslike kindness, but it lands. She pictures herself years from now, holding this same battered book, finally able to say plainly what she did and who she became. Somewhere behind the counter, he raises an invisible toast to the lesson landing. She thanks him, nearly scalding him back for his trouble in the process. When it's time to check the book out, he slides across a lending card instead of asking more questions. The name she writes ties back to a family that built half the district underground, which makes her either a very interesting regular or a very expensive mistake. He decides to play it patient, 1 month to return the book, a week's grace if she needs it, and an umbrella thrown in besides. She asks, almost carelessly, who he really is. He gives her the simple version, just a bookstore owner with an inconvenient habit of helping strangers. She doesn't quite believe him, but lets the lie stand for now, calling him Mr. Lin on her way out. He tells her to come back sometime and means it more than she realizes. Alone again, he starts tidying the shelves for whoever walks in next, wondering if this small kindnesses, strange customers, rain that never stops is exactly why he ended up in this world. Lin Jie has already spent 3 years in Noken. He remembers the ritual that brought him here and the impossible wish behind it, a world filled with books. Back then, he was a folklore professor, obsessed with reading and collecting obscure works. He completed the ritual hoping to gain access to every book in existence, and when the chance finally came, he crossed the door without hesitation, knowing he could never return to Earth. Now, life in Noken has become surprisingly peaceful. Lin Jie spends his days surrounded by books, refreshing his shelves and reading endlessly. There are occasional customers whose problems he tries to ease, but lately the shop has been quiet. He is perfectly content with that. For him, a calm life with books is hardly a punishment. But peace never lasts forever. After closing the shop, Lin Jie attempts another ritual. He follows the mysterious instructions, waits for the circle to respond and gets nothing. The magic fails completely. Frustrated, he mocks the promise of a wish-granting ritual and nearly gives up. Yet this failure reminds him of the choice that changed his life. The moment he opened that door, he chose his dream over returning home. Since then, the city of Noken has become his entire world, and the bookstore has become a quiet place where he can read, work, and help the occasional stranger. Lin Jie wonders how the woman from the previous encounter is doing. He assumes she must be feeling better by now. He has no idea how much that single book has affected her. Meanwhile, the rain continues, and another mysterious figure makes his way toward the shop. The stranger is in trouble. His body is barely responding, and even moving his hand has become difficult. Then he notices the source of the problem. The book from Lin Jie is somehow involved. The realization leaves him stunned. He has finally connected the strange events to the bookstore. Another customer soon appears at the door. He enters quietly, and Lin Jie greets him as one of the shop's regular visitors. The man is carrying an unusual book, and Lin Jie immediately notices that something is different about him. This is no ordinary scholar. Lin Jie remembers the customer's connection to Frank Wilde, known as the Black-Scaled Faceless. The name carries terrifying weight. Frank Wilde is described as a destructive black mage with a frightening mask and dark green eyes linked to his unusual blood. He once fought one of the 10 Holy Knights and destroyed an enormous area, earning a reputation that few can rival. And yet Lin Jie treats him casually. To Lin Jie, Old Wilde is simply another customer who seems lonely and could probably use some conversation. He knows the man rarely receives kindness, so he decides to make him comfortable instead of pressing him with questions. 2 years earlier, their relationship began in almost the same way. A mysterious customer entered the shop. Lin Jie's instincts immediately recognized a story, and he started searching for the best way to earn the man's trust. The visitor appeared wealthy, educated, and deliberately hidden behind his appearance. Lin Jie starts with tea. He keeps the conversation gentle and points out that judging people by appearances is foolish. The masked scholar responds positively, accepting the tea and revealing more about himself through the books he carries. Lin Jie notices references to obscure and dying languages and realizes he has found a serious linguist. The conversation becomes stranger. The scholar can sense something unusual inside the manuscripts, while Lin Jie remains completely relaxed. He believes the books are harmless because he prepared them himself. Neither man fully understands what the other is seeing. Lin Jie decides to recommend another book, this time about an especially complex language. He sees an easy path to winning a loyal customer, but the scholar recognizes the subject immediately and is stunned by the rarity of the work. Lin Jie gives a simple explanation for where he found it, calling the source an ancient civilization. The scholar becomes even more fascinated. To him, Lin Jie now seems connected to a lost culture and knowledge far beyond ordinary research. Lin Jie, meanwhile, thinks nothing of it. He only sees an excited customer who finally found the book he needed. The scholar, however, is already imagining what kind of terrifying genius could possess such knowledge. Then Lin Jie notices one more thing. The customer wants another book. 40 years ago, a terrifying scene unfolded. A black mage was confronted with a strange command. Find the sound of your soul, then create your own language. The idea sounded impossible, yet the mystery clearly carried enormous power. Back in the bookstore, an old customer returns to his question. The book he has been studying is too obscure, and he believes it belongs to a single language system. Lin Jie listens as the conversation turns toward magic, where words and languages themselves become sources of power. Lin Jie pauses to think. To the visitor, that silence means something completely different. He sees Lin Jie as unusually wise and selfless, nothing like an ordinary bookstore owner. 2 years earlier, he had lost terribly against Joseph, and his path had become uncertain. Lin Jie was the one who guided him forward. Since then, the clues have slowly accumulated. The visitor has spent 2 years studying the remaining knowledge in that mysterious book, searching for forbidden spells. Now he believes he has finally found a breakthrough. Every discovery in his mind leads back to the same extraordinary teacher. Then Lin Jie reveals what he has prepared. It is a book titled Rituals and Folklores, with Lin Jie listed as the author. He presents it as something suitable for Old Wilde, almost casually, as though handing over an ordinary recommendation. But the book immediately shocks the visitor. The title points toward the cults of ghouls, and the work carries an atmosphere that feels far more significant than a normal study. Lin Jie admits that it is his own work, leaving Old Wilde stunned by the revelation. The discussion expands into religion and forbidden research. Old Wilde identifies several major faiths, then focuses on the unfamiliar cults of ghouls. He has never encountered it before. The evil aura surrounding the material makes him wonder whether Lin Jie is actually trying to establish an entirely new religion. Suddenly, the strange clues begin fitting together. Old Wilde imagines a powerful scholar studying forbidden subjects. isolated because ordinary people could never understand his work. In his mind, this explains why Lin Jie hides so much about himself. Every vague answer only makes Lin Jie seem more mysterious. Old Wild examines the book more carefully and notices that it appears to have been bound by hand. Lin Jie explains that an accident kept him from publishing it. Only one copy exists, making the book far more precious than an ordinary volume. Yet Lin Jie offers that single copy anyway. Old Wild can barely believe his luck. To him, this is an unpublished experimental work from a brilliant scholar, entrusted directly into his hands. He accepts the gift while quietly wondering what Lin Jie could possibly want in return. Old Wild calls the book invaluable and imagines it as Lin Jie's life's work. But Lin Jie brushes that idea aside. Knowledge, he explains, lives inside his own mind. Books can be stolen, fame can disappear, and wealth can be taken. None of those things matter nearly as much to him. Old Wild still feels uneasy. If this priceless book means so little to Lin Jie, perhaps there's another reason for giving it away. Maybe he is being tested. Maybe the book itself is part of a larger plan. But Lin Jie remains completely calm. He sees Old Wild's hesitation as simple kindness and gratitude. After all, the visitor had been deeply interested only moments ago. Lin Jie decides the only thing left to do is reassure him and make absolutely sure the old scholar understands what he has just received. Lin Jie sits across from Old Wild, calmly pushing a book toward him. To Lin Jie, this is more than a simple recommendation. He sees an aging scholar who needs company, recognition, and perhaps a little excitement in his life. His reasoning is strangely sincere. Fame and wealth may not fill an empty heart, but meeting people can. Lin Jie presents the gift as a chance to reconnect with others, convinced that his advice will help rather than harm. Old Wild accepts the lesson with gratitude, yet Lin Jie remains cautious. Wild's words about fame and wealth make him wonder whether the older man is hiding some deeper meaning. Still, he chooses honesty and simply asks for one thing: recommend the book to others. The conversation turns into another exchange of favors. Old Wild intends to repay the kindness, and before long, a small object is brought forward. Lin Jie immediately notices it. It is a gargoyle, carefully crafted and clearly valuable to its owner. Old Wild explains where it came from. His teacher gave it to him when he graduated, and the creature is no ordinary decoration. It has powerful magical resistance, hardened skin, razor-sharp teeth and claws, and even the ability to sense murderous intent. Lin Jie studies the gift with genuine fascination. The craftsmanship looks almost alive. In his mind, the gargoyle is more than enough to count as precious, especially because it appears capable of repelling evil. He decides to accept it as a local gift from Old Wild. The response is immediate. Old Wild is delighted that Lin Jie appreciates the piece, and he promises that whatever comes next will be even better. But behind that polite smile, Lin Jie has another thought. A single book from someone as influential as Mr. Lin could apparently bring enormous value to Old Wild. That makes Lin Jie look almost unbelievably generous. Their meeting finally comes to an end. Old Wild leaves with plans to prepare an even better present next time, while Lin Jie watches the exchange with quiet satisfaction. The bookstore falls silent again, and the mysterious gargoyle remains behind. Then, Lin Jie notices something unsettling. The creature he has received may become part of a larger pair, as though Old Wild intends to make the collection more complete. Lin Jie even starts wondering whether the gargoyle is male or female. The answer hardly seems important compared with the object's intimidating appearance. Lin Jie finds its presence strangely invigorating. Whatever else it is, the gargoyle certainly has no shortage of menace. With the day's work finished, Lin Jie prepares to close the shop. In his mind, keeping a positive attitude is enough to attract better luck. He heads for the door, unaware that something very different is waiting outside. The moment he turns, Lin Jie freezes. A familiar presence has appeared. His eyes narrow, and the mood changes instantly. This is no ordinary customer arriving for a book. A man arrives armed and visibly shocked by what he sees. Recognition hits him immediately. In the darkness, with the gun raised, he realizes exactly who is standing before him. A familiar accusation hangs in the air. The hooded figure finally confronts the force that sent him into this strange world, demanding to know why he was chosen. 3 years have passed since their last conversation, and now he believes the time has come to settle the debt. But the hooded figure does not expect cruelty. He believes the existence behind his arrival may actually be benevolent, something that helped fulfill his wish. so he waits for a simple price in return. The answer points back to what he has already done. His books were recommended to others, and that act appears to have been enough to awaken this mysterious presence. Suddenly, the pieces fit together. Relieved, the young man realizes he may already have paid the required price. He has done his best, and for the moment, there seems to be nothing more demanded of him. Elsewhere, information about Wilde is spreading quickly. A report confirms that he has been seen on 23rd Noken Street, and more importantly, that he spent an entire hour inside an ordinary bookstore. To the people watching him, that is far too suspicious to ignore. The investigation takes a darker turn when a spy is discovered nearby. The watcher realizes too late that someone has been following the bookstore. A masked attacker moves first, and the confrontation ends almost instantly. The warning is unmistakable. Whoever attacked the spy knew exactly what was being watched, and they had no patience for anyone prying into that place. The bookstore is no longer just unusual. It is protected. Back inside the secret instrument tower, the matter becomes an official concern. Claude arrives with something strange to report. The investigators are already discussing the bookstore, the hunters, and the growing mystery surrounding Wilde. The situation immediately irritates the knight in charge. He blames the hunters for disturbing his retirement and makes it clear that he would rather have stayed home. His anger quickly overwhelms the room, forcing an advisor to remind him to control himself. Then the new case lands. The spy monitoring 23rd Noken Street has been killed. Worse, the report suggests he discovered Wilde's location before dying. That finally gets everyone's attention. Wilde was believed to have vanished after the Battle of White Hills 2 years earlier. A bounty was even placed on him. Only one person remained convinced he had survived. Now that belief has been proven right. The evidence becomes stranger by the minute. Wilde entered an ordinary bookstore and stayed there for more than an hour, perhaps borrowing or buying a book. The idea sounds ridiculous to the investigators, yet the bookstore itself checks out. It belongs to the Ash Tree Merchant Group, has operated for 3 years, and carries a solid reputation. There is only one unusual detail. The owner is not local. The investigators once suspected the store might secretly belong to black mages, but the Ash Tree connection makes that theory difficult to prove. They know the group is tied to druids, followers of nature and forests, which makes the situation even harder to explain. The argument grows heated. Their mission is supposed to be simple: destroy evil and protect peace. If Wilde is truly involved with evil, then they cannot simply ignore him. The knight decides there is only one solution: he will investigate the bookstore personally. Still, one officer cannot understand how anyone could believe that a feared black mage would spend an hour inside a bookstore just reading. Others remain unconvinced too, but the decision has already been made. The investigation will continue. The preparations begin. The tower's rooms fill the background as the Radiant Knight's investigation moves forward. Claude is ready. The order is active, and the mystery of Lin Jie is becoming impossible to dismiss. Then a name appears in the records: Lin Jie. The knight studying the file is Abraham Joseph, once one of the 10 Radiant Knights of the secret instrument tower. He intends to personally discover what kind of being Lin Jie truly is. But somewhere along the way, Lin Jie is already struggling with something of his own. A sudden vision catches him off guard. He covers his face, shaken by what he is experiencing, then realizes with frustration that the hallucinations have returned. The feeling refuses to disappear. Lin Jie looks toward the strange red glow, unable to understand why this is happening now. For a moment, the bookstore mystery fades into the background, replaced by a much more personal question. What exactly is awakening around him? The hunt has taken a brutal turn. A man desperate to reach the bookstore is forced to stop, but the reason is far more serious than bad timing. The sword in his hand carries a deadly curse, born from the madness and death of its former owner. Only someone with extraordinary strength and a perfectly controlled mind could resist it, and now the curse is already here. Elsewhere, the consequences of the betrayal are becoming impossible to contain. A figure in the rain realizes the young woman was far stronger than expected. She was never an easy target. Someone has already turned the white wolf into chaos, and the name at the center of it all is Helix. Then another identity is revealed. Ji Jixu, the former second-in-command of the White Wolf, is now being hunted as a monster. The situation escalates instantly. The hunters demand answers, but the enemy they face is already moving through the shadows. Max reports the truth. Helix has obtained the spawn of the magic mirror, and whatever restraint he once had is gone. He has begun massacring other hunters. Worse, Helix has joined forces with Casper, the third in command of the White Wolf. That alliance changes everything. Helix is already close to the terrifying panicky level. While Casper trained many of the hunters himself, this was not a sudden betrayal. The evidence suggests the entire assault may have been prepared long in advance. But one hunter refuses to let fear take control. The betrayal happened because of Helix's schemes, and the people who survived did so by trusting one another. Clothes were exchanged, pursuers were delayed, and one desperate escape became possible because someone was willing to stay behind. Now that survivor is standing before someone truly extraordinary. The transformed hunter can suppress the side effects of the tainted blood while remaining rational. That alone places her far beyond an ordinary hunter. Her control over the beast form is something the others cannot match. Her speed and destructive power leave the others stunned. Helix and the rest may be powerful, but the transformed hunter has reached an entirely different level. Even their strongest forces could fall before her if she fully unleashes that power. Still, she refuses to abandon the people around her. Loyalty matters. Kay and Max survived the mind corruption because of a loyalty rune placed upon their souls by the white mage of the house. That bond is the reason they can still trust one another when everything else is falling apart. Every hunter carries tainted blood. They chose this path knowing exactly what it could cost. Their purpose is to hunt the cruel dream beasts, even when that means facing the corruption inside themselves. There is no easy way back now. The group moves toward the church gate. Something is wrong. The silence is unnatural, and then the darkness begins to crack apart around them. Casper appears, but Helix is nowhere to be seen. The tension explodes into action. A syringe is demanded, and someone manages to get it in time, but the questions remain unanswered. Where is Helix? Did he take the spawn of the magic mirror with him? The response is chilling. His holiness will come. With the situation spiraling out of control, another option is raised. They may need the help of Haywood, the house mage. Whatever comes next, the hunters know they cannot face it alone. The investigation moves to 23rd Street. Orders are given, teams are rearranged, and Ryan is told to stay close. No one knows exactly what waits ahead, but the search for Helix is already underway. 3 quiet days have passed since Old Wild and Miss Jie visited the bookstore, and business has almost completely dried up. Mr. Lin can barely keep things running, admitting that Miss Jie's support has been helping him survive. Still, he hopes the book he recommended helped her after what she went through. With the weather keeping customers away, he starts thinking about better ways to share his books instead of relying on another lucky encounter. Then the quiet shop is interrupted. Miss Jie returns far sooner than expected. Mr. Lin is delighted to see her again, immediately hoping that another visit could finally turn his bookstore into a profitable business. To Miss Jie, however, the situation feels very different. She believes she has failed, and she has come back because she still needs guidance. As she enters, Miss Jie notices something that makes her uneasy. A gargoyle stands nearby, radiating an intimidating presence despite remaining completely still. The harmless shopkeeper seems perfectly comfortable with it. To her, that is another sign that Mr. Lin is anything but ordinary. A second man has accompanied Miss Jie. Ryan is introduced as her subordinate, and he immediately questions whether this quiet bookstore is really the place she intended to visit. Mr. Lin sees the situation differently. In his eyes, Miss Jie has simply brought along someone she trusts. Mr. Lin listens as Miss Jie explains what happened. At first, he assumes her strange language is just business terminology. She talks about fighting, an opponent escaping, and a plan falling apart. Slowly, the pieces begin to make sense to him. Miss Jie reveals that the battle lasted 2 days. After following Mr. Lin's previous advice, she had improved dramatically and managed to push her enemy back. One brutal 5-hour confrontation even allowed her to destroy his base, but the victory was incomplete. Her opponent had already prepared an escape route and abandoned his partner, taking Miss Jie's money with him. Mr. Lin is confused by the way she describes the whole affair. Fighting sounds suspiciously like romance, and he starts wondering whether Miss Jie has simply mixed business language into her explanation. Then he finally understands. She was talking about a betrayal, and the person responsible escaped before she could finish the job. Miss Jie admits that her target is still missing. Mr. Lin tries to reassure her, but the conversation suddenly takes an unexpected turn. Information arrives that confirms Wild the black-scaled faceless is somewhere in Nokin. Miss Jie is shocked that such classified information has already spread, while Ryan demands recognition for uncovering it. The exchange becomes tense. Miss Jie is grateful, but Ryan's attitude irritates everyone around him. He knows enough to realize that the loyalty rune protecting Miss Jie's subordinate can potentially be broken. More importantly, he becomes interested in the strange power that Miss Jie now possesses. Ryan is summoned by Miss Jie, and he leaves with a dangerous idea in mind. If he could discover how to control lycanthropy freely, he might gain the information needed to destroy the hunters. To him, that power could turn even someone insignificant into a king. But Miss Jie's behavior leaves Ryan deeply unsettled. She treats Mr. Lin with extraordinary respect, almost as though she were standing before something beyond human understanding. Mr. Lin, of course, sees none of that. He assumes she is simply frightened and reassures her that the situation is easier to solve than she thinks. Miss Jie is not convinced. She remembers the earlier advice and now suspects that Mr. Lin's vague words are merely tricks. Still, he asks her to remain calm and promises that good news will arrive soon. He then steps away, leaving her to process everything while he returns to his own ordinary concerns. Ryan cannot stay quiet. He accuses Mr. Lin of deception and tries to warn Miss Jie that she is being manipulated. Miss Jie snaps back, offended that someone brought into her presence would speak with such disrespect. Ryan insists that he can recognize a liar when he sees one, but she refuses to listen. Behind his confidence, Ryan has another plan. He wants to redirect Miss Jie's trust toward himself and convince her that his loyalty is genuine. But before the argument can go any further, something interrupts them. A sudden disturbance leaves Ryan stunned, and the power behind it becomes impossible to ignore. A violent confrontation has unfolded, and Ryan is left struggling to understand what happened. A monstrous presence looms nearby, while Miss Jie remains caught between confusion and alarm. The tension reaches its peak when the strange subordinate disappears from her side, leaving her wondering where he has gone and what exactly has just taken place. The battle ends in an instant. Whatever struck the enemy leaves no time to react. Even Ryan, who had already witnessed dangerous creatures before, realizes that the bookstore owner's warning came at exactly the right moment. A gargoyle had moved faster than anyone could follow, and one mistake would have meant death. What frightens Ryan most is the realization that Mr. Lin never needed to attack personally. He could simply stand aside and let the creature do it for him. That thought terrifies Miss Jiksu. The method is cold, efficient, and almost impossible to challenge. In her mind, it fits perfectly with the image of a terrifying dark wizard. She immediately worries about the damage already done. If Mr. Lin believes she brought the trouble into his shop on purpose, she may have just destroyed their fragile relationship. She desperately wants to fix the situation before it becomes irreversible. Then Mr. Lin notices how pale she has become. Instead of threatening her, he calmly asks what is wrong and tells her to relax while she is inside the shop. His attempt at humor only makes things worse. Miss Jikshu apologizes repeatedly, explaining that her attendant acted rudely and that bringing him there was never her intention. Mr. Lin is baffled. She looks so frightened that he starts wondering whether she genuinely thinks he might eat her. To Mr. Lin, the misunderstanding is almost absurd. He sees himself as a harmless and virtuous bookstore owner. Miss Jikshu, however, seems far too innocent, accepting frightening rumors much too easily. Still, Mr. Lin recognizes an opportunity. If he can calm her down and help her again, perhaps she will become a loyal customer, so he drops the jokes and turns the conversation back toward business. Miss Jiksu asks for another recommendation because she has no idea what to do next. Mr. Lin assumes her emotional state comes from the sudden crisis with her subordinate, but he also remembers something suspicious about the man. He points out that anyone loudly insisting on absolute loyalty may be hiding something. Miss Jiksu is stunned. She realizes Mr. Lin has noticed the same problem she feared. The real danger becomes clearer. White wizards use written runes to enforce loyalty, and only the caster can normally remove them. But Ryan's rune is no longer working. The person who created it was Haywood, the wizard of Miss Jikshu's father's house. If the rune was broken, then Haywood himself may have betrayed them. Suddenly, trust becomes worthless. Miss Jikshu wonders who she can rely on now, and Mr. Lin gives her a brutally simple answer. Herself. He follows that advice with a book, How the Steel Was Tempered. Mr. Lin believes its message can strengthen her resolve. The lesson is simple but powerful. Life should be lived without regret, and a person needs to discover their own purpose. Miss Jiksu listens, while his words begin to feel far deeper than an ordinary bookstore recommendation. To her, they sound like instructions for surviving a world where betrayal can come from anyone. Those words ignite something inside her. The idea of an iron will begins to take shape, and the strength of that resolve seems to affect more than her emotions. Elsewhere, strange forces move through darkness and blue light. A glowing orb responds, a supernatural presence awakens. Miss Jikshu reaches toward powers she may no longer be able to control. Then everything breaks loose. A monstrous winged creature emerges, and the pressure becomes overwhelming. Miss Jikshu feels the pain immediately. Haywood's rune has truly been undone. The creature surges forward, its power tearing through the surroundings as another ghostly presence appears in the darkness. The situation has transformed from suspicion into open supernatural chaos, and then Ryan hears a familiar voice. He is alive, transformed, and stronger than before. Ryan realizes that Mr. Lin's intervention has completely changed his condition, restructuring his soul and flooding his body with an enormous amount of ether. The power he received may finally allow him to advance beyond his previous rank. To Ryan, this is not just assistance, it is a second chance at life. Ryan immediately misunderstands Mr. Lin's intentions in a very different direction. He concludes that the bookstore owner is quietly building influence among the hunters and plans to reshape their entire organization from within. Completely convinced, Ryan promises absolute loyalty. Everything he is, he says, now belongs to Mr. Lin's will and instructions. Meanwhile, Mr. Lin has no idea why Miss Jikshu is still around, or why she suddenly has a nosebleed. Mr. Lin tries to put the strange encounter out of his mind. Sitting before his computer, he catches himself thinking about Miss Jikshu in a way he immediately rejects as impolite. To him, she is an elite lady far outside the world of an ordinary man like himself. He would rather focus on something practical, bringing new customers into the bookstore. But someone else cannot stop thinking about him. A girl keeps returning to the bookstore after being abandoned by the man who hurt her. Mr. Lin wonders whether her strange behavior means something more. Before he can finish the thought, footsteps approach through the wet night. Another customer may already be on the way. At 23rd Street, a determined investigator finally reaches the bookstore he has been searching for. The place looks harmless, but he believes it may be connected to an old maniac he has been tracking. He refuses to let the lead disappear. Inside, Lin Jie is enjoying a quiet moment with a gentle classic, The Little Prince. He finds the story warm, thoughtful, and perfect for relaxing before bed. Then the bell rings. Another customer has arrived, and Lin Jie immediately sees a chance to make a sale. The newcomer looks exhausted and unfriendly. Lin Jie welcomes him anyway, while the stranger slowly studies the shelves and the room. To him, the bookstore appears completely ordinary. There is only one thing that does not belong: the gargoyle sitting inside. The stranger immediately demands to know who owns the strange statue. Lin Jie explains that a customer gave it to him as a keepsake and that it is not for sale. The answer only makes the visitor more suspicious. He is a radiant knight, and he has no interest in anything associated with a dark wizard. Then the conversation takes a sharp turn. The visitor recognizes the name Frank Wilde. Lin Jie confirms it, and the knight starts wondering how this ordinary shopkeeper could possess a gargoyle connected to an old acquaintance. His suspicion grows, but he still cannot sense any ether around the bookstore. Lin Jie watches the man's behavior and reaches a completely different conclusion. Despite the aggression, the stranger has not damaged a single thing. To Lin Jie, that suggests restraint rather than evil. Using the logic associated with Sherlock Holmes, he searches for the simplest explanation left. The answer is surprisingly personal. The visitor admits that he has known Mr. Wilde for many years. Their relationship is complicated. 2 years ago, they had a violent conflict, after which Mr. Wilde disappeared without explanation. The knight has been looking for him ever since. Lin Jie completely misreads the situation. Instead of hearing a threat, he hears the pain of an old friendship. He becomes fascinated by the depth of their bond and imagines that Mr. Wilde would be deeply moved to learn how long his friend has been searching for him. The visitor asks whether Mr. Wilde left an address. Lin Jie has none to give. He only knows that Mr. Wilde borrowed a book a few days earlier and may return eventually. So Lin Jie offers the only things he can: a place to rest, a cup of tea, and perhaps something to read. The knight is stunned by how casually Lin Jie treats him. No fear, no trembling. Just simple hospitality. Even after years of being treated with formality, The knight finds this ordinary conversation strangely refreshing. He reluctantly accepts the tea and stays. Lin Jie reaches for a book and recommends The Little Prince. He remembers how comforting the story is and suggests reading it before sleeping. The knight immediately dismisses the idea as childish, but curiosity gets the better of him. Eventually, he asks to see the book for himself. Lin Jie jokes about the contrast between a fierce-looking man and the gentler nature he believes is hidden underneath. Then the knight opens the book. Instantly, something goes wrong. A strange pain surges through him, followed by a sudden dizziness. The harmless bedtime story has somehow triggered a violent reaction. The knight remembers Lin Jie's advice about reading before bed and realizes the timing cannot be ignored. His body stops responding normally. He reaches out, unable to understand what is happening. Lin Jie panics and assumes the visitor may be suffering from a stroke or cerebral hemorrhage. But something is wrong with Lin Jie's assumptions. After checking the fallen man, he finds a strong pulse and steady breathing. The knight appears to be asleep rather than dying. Even his physical condition seems far stronger than expected. Lin Jie can only stare at the unconscious customer and wonder what caused the collapse. He doubts that an ordinary fairy tale could produce such a reaction, yet the timing is impossible to ignore. Since the man fainted inside the bookstore, Lin Jie decides to let him rest and ask what happened when he waked. The bookstore has become a strange refuge for another wounded visitor. Lin Jie notices how difficult the man's condition is and tries to help him settle down. To Lin Jie, it is simply another customer in need. He has no idea how extraordinary the man actually is. Then Lin Jie notices the mechanical arm. Its construction is far too complicated for an ordinary person. Combined with the man's enormous physique, commanding voice, and guarded attitude, Lin Jie quickly reaches a conclusion. This must be a retired, high-ranking military officer carrying the scars of a brutal past. Lin Jie also worries that the mechanical arm may malfunction in the rain. He connects the sudden collapse to an electrical shock and starts overthinking the entire scene. From his perspective, dragging an unconscious giant through a bookstore at night looks suspiciously like the beginning of a crime. But Lin Jie refuses to let his imagination get out of control. The man is simply a stubborn old veteran who passed out after a dangerous shock. Seeing that he is still clutching the book even while unconscious, Lin Jie decides to let him rest. His concern is genuine, even if his assumptions are wildly off. Outside, someone is watching the bookstore. A sudden noise makes the observer panic, only for a black cat to appear and ruin the suspense. But the observer's fear is real. The more he watches Lin Jie, the less ordinary the bookstore owner seems. The observer finally identifies himself as Morrison Gregg, an investigator from the Secret Instrument Tower Intelligence and Reconnaissance Bureau. He is also a devoted admirer of Sir Joseph. That is exactly why he followed the trail into this bookstore in the first place. At first, Morrison Gregg finds nothing unusual. There is no magical reaction. The shop looks completely normal. He even starts thinking about getting an autograph later. 10 minutes pass, Joseph still has not come out. Curiosity wins and Morrison decides to take a look. What he finds leaves him stunned. Joseph, who had been talking moments earlier, is now unconscious. Morrison cannot understand how a young-looking bookstore owner could possibly have done this. He starts wondering whether some kind of dark magic was used. Then Lin Jie notices the watcher. Morrison instantly realizes he has been seen, and panic takes over. He knows that this young man is far beyond his ability to defeat. Instead of attacking, Lin Jie simply warns him that the streets are dangerous and tells him to hurry home. Morrison escapes with his life, but the experience changes his entire understanding of the bookstore. He believes Lin Jie deliberately allowed him to survive so he could return and report what happened. There is only one problem. He has no idea how to explain any of it. Then the curse strikes. Joseph finds himself falling through darkness, expecting another attack from Candela. Yet something is different. There is no pain. Instead, strange words begin flooding into his mind, overwhelming his senses. The words come from a fairy tale Lin Jie once recommended. Joseph suddenly realizes that those seemingly harmless stories may hold something far greater. The abyss looks back at him, and somehow, it recognizes him. The pain of the curse begins to fade. Candela seems strangely affected as well, and Joseph senses a change he cannot explain. Whatever Lin Jie did with that book, it has altered the curse's behavior. Finally, Joseph wakes. The terrifying episode is over, at least for now. The old man opens his eyes to find that the bookstore's strange influence has left him with more questions than answers. But one thing is becoming clear. The books in Lin Jie's shop are anything but ordinary. The meeting begins peacefully. Mr. Lin receives thanks and immediately checks on his guest, asking whether he feels better. The answer is unmistakable, the improvement is dramatic. The once struggling man feels stronger than ever, and Mr. Lin simply assumes his advice has done its job. But the guest is watching Mr. Lin closely. His presence feels fierce enough to belong to a former soldier, while the old man beside him looks capable of ending a fight with a single punch. Mr. Lin, completely unaware of the danger hidden in his own surroundings, continues treating everyone as an ordinary customer. That simple attitude leads to a startling conclusion. The bookstore owner truly seems neutral. Whoever walks through the door becomes his guest, and Mr. Lin helps them without caring about their identity or their side. To the observer, such unwavering kindness can only belong to something ancient. The theory grows even stranger. If Mr. Lin belongs to the elves, his love of books suddenly makes perfect sense. Elves are remembered for wisdom and long lives, and humans have gradually lost their interest in reading. The bookstore could be the natural expression of someone who has existed far longer than ordinary people. Then an even darker possibility appears. Ancient legends speak of Candela, a prince of an old elven kingdom who became the king of the moon elves. He was the first to fall into madness, becoming the source of a terrible plague. Candela ultimately took his own life with his sword, but death did not end the curse. His soul became bound to the weapon, transforming Candela into a sword of madness. Anyone who wielded it would eventually lose their sanity and die. That makes the next discovery almost unbelievable. The book in Mr. Lin's hands appears capable of calming the cursed sword. To the visitor, there is only one possible explanation. The owner of such a book must be an ancient being who has seen and understood more than anyone else alive. The explanation becomes even more elaborate. Perhaps this ancient creature used every kind of magic to extend his life, eventually reaching a state where he no longer emits any trace of ether. Suddenly, every strange detail about the bookstore seems to fit the theory. Mr. Lin has no idea any of this is happening. He only notices that his customer is deeply interested in the book and offers to lend it out. In his mind, this is simply good customer service. Then he starts what he considers his most useful service of all, another session of therapy. Mr. Lin quickly identifies what he thinks is the real problem. The guest has spent years blaming himself for past failures, convinced that greater strength could have changed everything. That guilt has become self-hatred, and the burden has slowly turned into psychological torture. But Mr. Lin offers a different interpretation. Their suffering was not necessarily what defeated them. Their kindness may have been the weakness that left them vulnerable. They wanted to protect others, carried impossible expectations, and tried to appear invincible while their own defenses remained fragile. The idea hits hard. Kindness itself is not the enemy. The problem is believing that you must save everyone while never allowing yourself to step back. Sometimes being ordinary is enough. Sometimes survival requires refusing to carry the entire world alone. For the guest, the realization is explosive. The cursed sword may not have been the true cause of madness. The deeper problem could have been the endless pursuit of perfection. Now, one terrifying question remains: can this calm last? Mr. Lin answers with complete confidence. Of course, a story cannot magically solve everything forever, but he believes he can provide a lasting result to him. This is simply another opportunity to keep helping a customer over the long term. To the visitor, however, those words sound completely different. Could this ordinary-looking bookstore owner really be willing to take on the curse of Candela himself? The name of Radiant Knight Joseph enters the conversation, along with the grim history of the sword's previous wielders. The conclusion is unsettling. Joseph survived longer than most because he had already abandoned himself before the sword could completely corrupt him. The legendary title he once carried no longer means much. His survival may have come from surrender rather than strength. Then everything falls into place. The cursed sword may have finally found someone suited to wield it. The new candidate is clearly connected to Old Wild, and both men share the same overwhelming concern for others. The visitor agrees to continue, even though the path ahead may be dangerous. Mr. Lin refuses to be intimidated. He calls himself a professional life coach and confidently offers the book as a gift. To the man listening, this is almost impossible to comprehend. Such generosity must belong to someone who has lived for an extraordinary length of time. Mr. Lin gently reminds him that people like him have carried too many burdens for too long. Heroes deserve a break too. Then the practical part begins. Registration, a borrowing card, and a simple promise to return in 7 days. The customer still refuses to rest. There is work left to do before the world can be at peace. But now he has the book, and he has a reason to believe that his burden can finally be handled differently. He promises to return after 7 days. Outside the bookstore, the transformation continues. The man no longer feels crushed beneath the weight of his past. His responsibility remains, but the despair is gone. He can finally move forward with a clearer mind. Meanwhile, the consequences of Mr. Lin's advice are spreading far beyond the bookstore. One side learns that Wilde survived and was aided by the owner, but they are not frightened. They believe the old man will eventually be killed by their own hands. Elsewhere, the book itself becomes the focus of another obsession. To its reader, Mr. Lin's collection is a vast sea of knowledge, deep enough to hide entire worlds of mystery. The more he reads, the more excited he becomes. And then comes the final realization, the strange rituals, the impossible knowledge, the mysterious bookstore owner. Everything points towards something far greater than an ordinary shopkeeper. The black-scaled, faceless man will soon reappear in Noken, and this reader believes the darkest secrets of the lost civilization are finally within reach. Grateful for everything Mr. Lin has unintentionally revealed, the mysterious observer decides to prepare a gift. Whatever happens next, he is certain of one thing: Mr. Lin is going to love it. The report leaves everyone stunned. Their teacher was inside the bookstore, and he collapsed simply from encountering its owner. The team immediately wants to send support, but the order comes first. Nobody takes unnecessary risks after seeing what happened. Then the call is answered. The voice on the other end belongs to their terrifying teacher, and his first command is absolute: pull every investigator away from 23rd Street at once. The bookstore is no longer treated as an ordinary location. It is elevated to the highest classified level. The classification shocks the team. An indescribable anomaly is considered beyond their normal categories, and the bookstore somehow qualifies. One investigator nervously asks what is happening, while the teacher immediately notices that someone is nearby and demands an explanation. Claude admits the situation is already under control. His teacher is furious, but the anger quickly reveals something familiar. Claude knows that the intimidating Radiant Knight has always been strict, yet fair, follow the orders exactly, and the anger disappears as quickly as it comes. With the emergency handled, a new classified file is created for the bookstore. Claude believes the elders will understand why it is necessary. The teacher approves it himself and leaves instructions for the final report to be completed when he returns. Before leaving, another issue comes up. The teacher wants to know who was present during the encounter and reminds them to remove the memory of anyone who should not remember it. Claude suddenly realizes he forgot about someone. That someone is Morrison Gregg, a talented shapeshifter from a mage family. But there is an embarrassing detail. Morrison is not merely an investigator. He is an enormous admirer of the Radiant Knight, joining countless fan clubs and spending a fortune supporting them every year. The teacher cannot believe how much money this fanatic wastes. Instead of donating it directly to his idol, Morrison spends it on elaborate tributes. Then the plan becomes obvious. Recruit him as an apprentice knight. Close contact with his hero should make the fan more than happy. The official file is finally written. The bookstore on 23rd Street is labeled a Class I area with top-secret security. Its owner appears to be a longtime recluse who simply lends and sells books. But those books contain mysterious, immense powers. The location is marked friendly, yet contact is strongly discouraged. The warning is enough to keep most people away. But the teacher himself is still dealing with the aftermath. He angrily insists that he is alive and working, then lashes out at everyone who keeps bothering him. His temper remains as sharp as ever. Later, he checks himself again. Whatever that strange bookstore owner did, the effect has passed. The book has not changed his mood either, which is another small relief. For now, the situation appears stable. Then a phone rings. The caller turns out to be much closer to home. A father reminds Melissa to drink her milk, only to receive an irritated reminder that she is no longer a child. She is already an abnormal-level combat knight captain. Her father insists the milk is not about growing taller. It is about the future. He worries that someone so focused on combat will never get married. Melissa is furious. In her mind, her father is just another muscle-brained relic who refuses to understand her. Then Melissa discovers a book. She cannot believe her father has been reading. Curiosity takes over, and she opens it herself. Page after page pulls her deeper until she realizes the story is far better than she expected. The book completely changes her mood. Melissa becomes emotional, fascinated by the characters and the world inside the pages. She wonders who could have written something this vivid. Even imagining that its protagonist might be the ancient elf King Candela, she refuses to stop reading. The most exciting part is still ahead, and being forced away from the story makes her furious. Her father's habit suddenly seems less ridiculous. Perhaps she was unfair to him after all. Then Melissa notices one crucial detail. Her father said the book came from a highly classified bookstore. That instantly gives her an idea. She accesses a Class I database using a key inherited from her deceased mother, one of the Radiant Knights. The search works. Melissa finds the bookstore's classification and its connection to Joseph. Her admiration for her mother strengthens her resolve. Inspired by the novel, she promises to work hard and become an excellent knight, determined not to disappoint the woman who came before her. Then she sees the final classification, friendly. Melissa immediately decides the danger cannot be that serious. Maybe the old legends are exaggerated. Maybe she can simply go there herself and take a look. She reaches for a drink, hesitates, and forces herself to swallow. Her curiosity has already won. Whatever is waiting inside that bookstore, Melissa is now determined to find out. And she has no idea how dangerous that innocent decision may become. The rain has become a disaster. It has poured for a week, the warning has reached the highest level, and the lower city of Nuojin is now closed. Lin Jie has barely enough time to keep his shop running, and the first floor has already been flooded. Somehow, the books are still safe. After exhausting himself cleaning everything, he can only hope the storm finally eases. Elsewhere, another man is having a much smaller crisis. His TV has stopped working during the storm, and the fuse box is outside. Going there himself in this weather sounds miserable, so he turns to his neighbor. He already knows that this neighbor enjoys helping people. One request later, the answer comes immediately. The neighbor agrees to check the breaker for him. But when the visitor reaches the bookstore, something about him feels strangely familiar. Lin Jie greets him like an old acquaintance and even remembers the book he borrowed before. To Lin Jie, this is simply a friendly neighbor doing him a favor. To the other man, the entire situation feels much harder to understand. Still, Lin Jie does not want to reject someone who came all this way through the storm just to help. The favor is completed, and Lin Jie thanks him as though this were nothing unusual. The neighbor leaves satisfied, convinced that he has done something meaningful. Lin Jie, meanwhile, is already thinking about what this could lead to. If people remember his kindness, perhaps they will help his bookstore in return. For Lin Jie, another good deed feels like another step toward a better business. And then the shop receives another visitor. Lin Jie welcomes the newcomer calmly, but this man has clearly come for a specific reason. It is old Wiley. Despite the terrible weather, he has returned to see Mr. Lin once again. Lin Jie wonders why he would make the journey under such conditions, while old Wiley sees something very different. Another chance to repay the kindness he has received. Old Wiley is still thinking about the previous gift. He believes Mr. Lin has treated him with extraordinary kindness, and this time he has prepared something even more valuable. Lin Jie immediately tries to refuse. He is already satisfied with the last gift and does not want to accept something expensive without knowing what it is. But old Wiley insists. He has spent 2 years preparing this present, and refusing it would make him feel terrible. At last, Lin Jie sees the gift. It is a dream catcher. The sight immediately brings back memories from before he crossed into this world, when he attended a folk culture event and learned about its meaning. The object is associated with dreams, filtering nightmares and preserving beautiful ones. Lin Jie knows that dream catchers can have mystical significance, but he is still surprised that old Wiley managed to find something like this. The conversation goes even deeper. Lin Jie realizes the dream catcher is not valuable merely because of its craftsmanship. Its real power lies in what has been trapped inside the net. The finer details show that it was carefully woven by hand, making the gift even more impressive. And with the endless rain keeping Lin Jie from sleeping properly, the timing could hardly be better. He accepts the present with genuine gratitude. But old Wiley has one final revelation. The beautiful dreams contained in the dream catcher are not harmless decorations. The net also holds a terrifying danger. Anyone whose rank is too low could have their soul crushed simply by entering the dream world connected to it. What Lin Jie sees as a thoughtful present is actually an artifact containing immense power. And old Wiley knows exactly how extraordinary that gift is. The battle is already underway. Max warns the woman beside him that he never expected their enemies to bring mages into the fight. The danger is no longer just steel and brute force. Magic is now closing in from every side. The warning comes too late. The enemy's attack surges forward, forcing the fighters into a desperate exchange. Blades move through the chaos while the battlefield disappears beneath flashes of violence. There is no time to retreat, and every second makes survival less certain. Then the monster appears. Its eyes glow through the darkness, its body hunched as though preparing to tear through everything in its path. A sword drips with blood nearby, but the sight only makes the creature seem more dangerous. One look at it is enough to freeze the people facing it. The transformation shocks everyone. Someone coughs up blood and struggles to understand what just happened. This is not the simple beast form they were prepared for. It can be controlled, and that detail was never mentioned by Helix. The answer comes with another warning. The blood of the wolf of the silent court is supposed to fear fire, so the fighters immediately consider using fire, niter, and sulfate against it. But there is a brutal problem: it is raining heavily. Their ideal countermeasure is almost impossible to use. There is no more time for hesitation. The attackers brace themselves and decide to fight anyway. A flaming sword cuts through the darkness as the clash begins again, and the woman with long white hair stands ready with her staff. She does not retreat. Her expression remains firm while the power around her grows. The young man watching her realizes just how serious the situation has become. Whatever she is about to unleash, it is enough to change the entire battlefield. Then the energy explodes outward. A massive blue orb forms behind her, filling the scene with overwhelming power. The people facing her finally understand that they may have pushed the wrong opponent too far. The threat is no longer being contained. The power behind her is something the hunters have dreamed of obtaining, yet few could ever control it like this. Her strength could open an entirely new path for them, completely changing what hunters are capable of. Someone has stepped in to help her, and that alone shocks the people watching. Noken still has someone capable of controlling a beast form, and even Wild is not known to possess that level of control. The group immediately starts looking for Wild. Reports place him on 23rd Street as well, but there is still no sign of him. The order is simple: go find him. After all, he is still your teacher. Then the situation suddenly changes. The wolf-like creature realizes it made a mistake. The dream beast called the Wolf of the Silent Court is famous for crossing dimensions, but that ability has failed to make this encounter safe. Worse, the enemy has already found the coordinates needed to reach them. The question is no longer who arrived, it is how their position was discovered so easily. A powerful attack tears through the battlefield. Fire erupts as the spell crashes toward the wolf-like creature, forcing an immediate response. Another flash follows, overwhelming the senses. The creature recognizes the technique at once. Whoever is casting these spells is not an ordinary mage. The language is precise, refined, and powerful enough to shape devastating magic. The wolf-like creature struggles to move. Its reactions are slowing, and every second becomes more dangerous. It tries to force itself forward anyway, but the pressure keeps building. Then it calls upon sheer determination, repeating the technique known as Will of Steel. The desperate effort gives it just enough strength to keep fighting. After the exchange, the real danger becomes clear. The owner of 23rd Street may be far more powerful than anyone expected. It is not simply the ability to teleport that worries them. The terrifying part is what happened to Ryan. She was able to extract information directly from his soul. That means distance, secrecy, and even death may no longer be enough to hide anything from her. Helix understands the threat immediately. The thought of facing such an opponent sends panic through him. He admits that he is no match and fears that he will die if the confrontation continues. The wolf-like creature gives the same warning: run. But escape is not as simple as it sounds. Helix's body has already been twisted and damaged, and he can only force out one more desperate teleportation. Someone checks on Helix as the rain continues around them. Helix explains what matters most now. The enemy can pinpoint their location with frightening accuracy and dispel mental spells as well. Yet instead of focusing only on survival, Helix becomes fascinated by that ability. A power capable of finding them and tearing through their defenses is exactly the kind of power worth understanding. But there is no time to study it. Something more urgent demands attention. Helix orders Yuan to investigate, making it clear that this target is even more important than Wild. Yuan accepts the command without hesitation and moves on. Then they turn their attention to a glowing blue orb. Yuan wonders what will emerge from it. At first, the answer seems obvious: another dream beast. But that assumption is immediately rejected. Whatever is about to hatch is something far beyond that. The final realization is chilling. The glowing presence is not merely another creature. It is God. Not a symbol, not a metaphor, but a real God. And whatever is inside that orb may be the beginning of something far more dangerous than the battle they just survived. Night settles over the bookstore, while the rain refuses to stop. Lin Jie has accepted that the bad weather will keep everyone inside, so he simply stays home and waits. Before going to sleep, he notices the dream catcher hanging nearby. It is another piece of Old Wild's craftsmanship, beautifully made and supposedly useful as a blessing. Lin Jie hopes it will actually do its job. Then he closes his eyes, wishing himself a good night. When Lin Jie opens his eyes again, everything has changed. Snow stretches across the landscape, yet strangely it is not cold. The flakes feel almost warm beneath his feet, more like ash than ordinary snow. At first, Lin Jie assumes it must be a dream. The impossible scenery only makes that explanation seem more reasonable. He walks deeper into the snowy world and suddenly stops. The sight before him is breathtaking. A colossal tree rises into the sky, its twisting branches spreading like a skeletal structure beneath a crown that seems to cover everything. Lin Jie can barely believe such a tree could exist in reality. The entire place feels like something pulled from a fairy tale. Then a strange melody appears in Lin Jie's mind. A ghostly figure stands in the snow, while the dream itself takes on the atmosphere of an old winter legend. The scene is so spectacular that Lin Jie can only stare. For a moment, even his imagination feels more real than the world he left behind. He thinks of Old Wild and realizes the old man's stories may not have been exaggerated after all. A delicate flower catches Lin Jie's attention. Its appearance is perfect, its scent clean and refreshing. He reaches out and examines it closely, convinced that no ordinary dream could reproduce something this convincing. That gives him a theory. Perhaps this is lucid dreaming, a state where the dreamer keeps both their memory and their ability to think clearly. Lin Jie connects everything to the dream catcher and Old Wild's earlier advice. In his mind, the object must have planted a suggestion that created this entire experience. The explanation sounds scientific enough to satisfy him, and he even congratulates himself for figuring it out. Then a much more interesting thought appears. If this really is his dream, maybe he can change it however he wants. For a moment, Lin Jie tries to test the limits. But even inside a dream, things do not become completely unreasonable. Still, he decides to indulge himself a little. After all, nobody is watching. The person standing before him is beautiful, unfamiliar, and clearly impossible to meet anywhere in his normal life. Since this is only a dream, Lin Jie convinces himself that none of it really matters. The strange figure remains calm, and Lin Jie becomes more fascinated. The dream seems unusually vivid, almost too detailed for his imagination. He begins wondering why this person feels so unfamiliar and yet so clear. Still, his conclusion does not change. A dream is a dream. Anything inside it should be possible. With that excuse, Lin Jie finally lets himself act on pure curiosity. He moves through the snowy forest while the silver-haired, pointed-eared figure watches from above. Then Lin Jie gets a better look and realizes just how enormous this dream visitor is. The size difference is almost absurd, and it only makes the whole experience feel even less real. The figure finally speaks and asks Lin Jie who he is. That simple question catches him completely off guard. He expected everything to follow his imagination, yet now the dream itself seems to be responding to him. Lin Jie looks up, surprised that she spoke first, while she continues watching him from the snowy branches. Lin Jie takes another look and decides the conclusion is obvious. This cannot be real. The beauty in front of him is simply too perfect, like a living work of art created by his own mind. Yet, while he admires the figure as if she were an unreachable masterpiece, the dream continues to deepen around him. What began as a harmless night's sleep has become something far stranger, and Lin Jie still has no idea that this dream may be showing him more than he intended to see. The dream has become stranger than Lin Jie ever expected. The woman already understands that this place is a dream, yet she speaks with the confidence of someone who has been trapped here for an unimaginable length of time. Lin Jie realizes that the person standing before him is not a simple illusion. She knows too much, and her answers are too precise. For now, Lin Jie is satisfied with one fact. His own answer was correct, but the woman immediately turns the question around. She wants to know who he really is. Lin Jie tries to avoid revealing too much, but the mysterious woman calmly waits. Finally, she gives him a single word as her name, Silver. That answer only creates more questions. Silver refuses to offer anything beyond her name, while Lin Jie notices how confidently she pushes the conversation back toward him. She has spent so long in this dream that she no longer even knows how much time has passed, yet she still finds the place beautiful. Then, Silver admits what truly bothers her. The dream is beautiful but painfully quiet. Lin Jie quickly recognizes the feeling. It is loneliness. For someone isolated in a perfect world, even paradise can become unbearable. And strangely enough, this dream seems almost perfectly suited to Lin Jie himself. A romantic hill covered in flowers. A beautiful and elegant companion. A peaceful world where Lin Jie can help someone with his words. To him, helping others has always been strangely satisfying. So satisfying that even this dream feels like the perfect place to indulge in it. Still, Lin Jie notices one problem. He is dressed far too casually. If this is a lucid dream, then perhaps he can shape it with his imagination. He concentrates, and suddenly his usual suit appears. The dream responds to his thoughts exactly as he hoped. That gives Lin Jie new confidence. He approaches Silver and gently touches her face, studying the dream as though it were real. Silver is visibly surprised by the contact. Lin Jie, however, is more interested in understanding who she is and why she exists here. He begins to see her differently. Perhaps Silver is a philosopher, living alone inside a beautiful world of her own creation. Lin Jie reaches for an old saying and twists its meaning into something more personal. If a god could see a thinker this extraordinary, perhaps even a god would be impressed. Silver then reveals the truth about this place. No one has ever entered this dream before, not a single person. Except Lin Jie. That realization changes the conversation completely. His presence means he has somehow crossed a boundary that should have been impossible to cross. Silver believes that anyone capable of appearing here must already understand her on some level. Perhaps Lin Jie is an even greater thinker than she expected. To Lin Jie, the scene looks almost like a fairy tale, a beautiful woman living alone inside an eternal garden, waiting endlessly with no one to understand her. But Lin Jie also understands the limitation. This is still a dream. Even if he can recognize Silver's loneliness, he may not be able to truly change anything. So he does the one thing he knows best. He explains what loneliness really is and why endless contemplation can make that pain even worse. Silver finally begins to understand. Perhaps thinking does not always have to be painful. Perhaps being understood, even silently, can make the burden lighter. Lin Jie imagines that simple understanding as something almost sacred, a quiet connection between two people who normally would never meet. Then Silver asks for something far more personal. She wants Lin Jie to become her friend. He quickly realizes that a direct request might normally be rejected, so he tries to frame the answer carefully. The strange dream world has already changed the rules between them. Lin Jie tells Silver that this may be exactly why they can speak so freely. He sees himself as something of a romantic, and Silver recognizes that immediately. For the first time, the mysterious woman seems genuinely open to the idea of friendship. Of course, Lin Jie is still Lin Jie. The moment friendship enters the conversation, his mind jumps straight to books. Since this is his dream, he decides that he can recreate one from memory. And soon a copy of Grimm's fairy tales appears before them. Silver reacts as though the gift means far more than a simple book. She has spent so long alone that receiving something from another person feels extraordinary. She has almost nothing to offer in return. Only the tree, its flowers, its fruit, and the honey around her. So Silver offers Lin Jie one of her own treasures, a golden fruit growing from the strange tree. Lin Jie studies it with curiosity, wondering whether this once-in-a-lifetime dream might contain something genuinely valuable. But Lin Jie soon discovers that the fruit is surprisingly ordinary. It looks magical, yet tastes much like a normal apple. Silver watches closely, waiting for his reaction. Lin Jie admits that it is sweet, while the impossible dream quietly continues around them. For a brief moment, everything feels peaceful. A strange dream, a mysterious woman, and an ordinary piece of fruit. Yet beneath that calm, something far more important has happened. Lin Jie is no longer simply observing the dream. He has formed a genuine connection with the person trapped inside it.